Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Hollywood Professional Association's Tech Retreat panel on the media distribution in the cloud. My name is Tony Ross. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Metaltoad, an advanced cloud consultancy specializing in content media solutions. Joining us are leaders who live and breathe the content distribution in the cloud every single day. Panelists, let's go around the table. Please introduce yourselves and your companies and what you do for them. And let's start with Bluen.
Hi, everyone. Very glad to be here. Bluen Gofik, Head of Business Development and Innovation at Accedo. Accedo is a video solution provider who is creating premium video experiences. We help content providers to grow their video business through the help of our product and services.
Great, thank you, Glenn. George.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is George Meek. I'm the CEO of InPlayer. We're the leading provider of monetization services for video online, whether it be live on demand, pay-per-view, or subscription, providing all those services for people to make money out of their content.
Thank you. And Logan.
Logan Ketchum, Director of Sales and Strategic Partnerships for Veritone, Inc., an AI company focused in media entertainment, offering different AI services for each part in the content lifecycle.
So, just when I think I understand where we are heading with content distribution, something comes along to surprise me. Last week I watched my first movie in a VR headset at my house. Yesterday I learned that the European Football Championship is partnering up with TikTok. So I think it's safe to say that we have a lot more surprises coming and new ways to distribute media, and more importantly, new ways to monetize both new and old media. And one thing I want to start with is to talk to the panel here about where we were at 10 years ago and kind of paint a picture for where we're at 10 years ago with monetization, generating revenue, and distributing to new types of screens, and where we're heading in 2021.
I mean, 10 years ago, I think people need to remember that in 2000, internet, barely existed, and we are 21 years after that, and it's just everyone need to realize how fast this has been evolving, right? And something that is very different from 10 years ago to now is the fragmentation of the video ecosystem, right? In terms not only of course, technology and so on, but also in terms of everyone's fighting for a minute of attention of the user. And I think the big shift has been that from big media companies that were having the possibility to solve the complexity, the technical complexity, and actually reach the audience on the new media, which was the essence of OTT before. Now we are, the cloud providers have been commoditizing all of this. And this is clearly that it's not the question of, can you get on the platform and monetize it? It's, will you sustainably stay and grow? The big question is there. And I think one key area is that the power now is to the audience. It's not any longer about who's going to have the shoulder to actually bring the content to the audience. It is who's going to be relevant enough to continuously find new audience and stay relevant.
2020, I was buried in efforts for direct-to-consumer applications. And one new challenge that direct-to-consumer introduces is the idea of dark content and finding new ways to recognize revenue across the portfolio of assets. Logan, a question for you is, what have you observed with studios going direct-to-consumer and being exposed to dark content?
I think the challenge becomes a lot of that content is generated for, first air, whether it's live news footage or, episodic content. And so there's no doubt that when it runs first, that content is extremely engaging for the audience. I think the challenge and then the opportunity becomes, further down the line when you have another opportunity, maybe on the same platform, maybe on a different platform, to engage, other viewers or audience members, is how can you repurpose that content or portions of that content in order to do that effectively and not burden your organization with having to create net new content for each platform organically. And sort of the challenge becomes if the metadata associated to that file initially is not robust enough, and you just have kind of the basic metadata of date, time, title, where it was filmed, kind of the whatever was on the camera card, it becomes difficult for media companies to repurpose that content moving forward. And content-based metadata, oftentimes, and from what I'm learning from my customers and partners, is a prerequisite for the content supply workflows, whether those workflows be manual or whether they be programmatic. And if tags don't exist, and by tags, again, it could be themes, actors, mapping to a IPTC or IAB taxonomy to figure out how to drive those content workflows. That content, it just sits in the archive. It's not used again. It's not remonetized, if you will. And so that's obviously we saw a content shortage during the pandemic, and some folks like Netflix and others got really creative around ways to capitalize on that. And I think moving forward, it will become a requirement for the largest and the smallest content owners and broadcasters to have a strategy on how they can sort of activate their archive in different and new and compelling ways.
If our goal is revenue recognition, what are some of the use cases that a more robust machine learning ecosystem could offer in revenue recognition in the coming years?
So rather than thinking about personalization, because let's face it, we're very far from having an inventory of ads that will enable personalization, but having contextual ads, which are about positioning the ads at the right moment, making sure that there is not an ad fatigue in that, and adding the context to what kind of ads should you put at this moment of the content is definitely key.
It seems to me that the companies that want to leverage that not only need to shine a AI light on dark content into their histories, but also need to unify their metadata with their audience analytics, so that you can almost blend the content and content recommendations with highly relevant advertising. How are we doing there? Are you seeing a lot of strong moves, or are we still in the beginning stages of unifying audience analytics and content libraries?
We're not any longer in a place where we don't know how. I think that's on the way to be sorted out. I think the major challenge today is really about how do you, once you have identified that you can do that, how do you make sure that every component is being attached to this? So how do you make sure that you have a feedback loop between your audience and all the different components that are actually can be flexible to adjust, whatever it's content distribution in terms of technical items, so video quality in terms of, CDN in terms of whatever it is, right? You can imagine you have a lot of work that is being done around analyzing the data of the client side to make sure that you can optimize your video distribution from a technical standpoint. But it can also grow into something more, right? Where you can suddenly decide to offer potentially different ads, but you could also look into, of course, recommending content, but also start looking at, okay, what are packages of content that suddenly emerge in your offering? When you start looking at the usual content packages that providers are putting behind the paywall, then you start realizing that, okay, actually by looking at the consumption that people have, you start having association of content that you might not have seen before. And suddenly you can have add-ons that are being created in your offering that are much more relevant to actually what people are used to watch, and might be connected to the next type of content that you could upsell through a package that you hadn't seen before. So I think there are, when we were in a squared box, your monetization strategy should be like this, and you're going to run with your sports package and your entitlement like this, and it's going to run for 3 to 4 or 5 years. Nowadays, it's like tons of experimentation. And I mean, we're working with George in a lot of different OTT services, and we can see that now it's very much needed for them to constantly experiment on their packaging and offering, and that's only possible if you get the data, if you can actually analyze your data and decide on adjusting your offering. I don't know if you agree, George.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny. It's one of the things we've been working on, and it's actually pretty complex. The ad world has got a little bit, I don't know, I think they don't necessarily get it quite right either. But when you look at what we do, because we work with a huge number of different players, as I'm saying, video players and devices, and then to be able to look at who that audience is across those devices and those players, and then do, bring them all together for those individual clients, and then understand again, the immediate consumption versus payment versus, work timing and all of that aspect. We don't have that. And it's something we've been working and looking at with partners again. But to do that, you'd need to then look, okay, I need to be integrated with player 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This client is integrated with that. Then it's just tying all of that together. Now, I have a very simple analogy again with this is, our clients who succeed with us are digital first. If you bring on like an old school sort of broadcast model, they've come in and say, yeah, I want to get some content that needs to be actually, rather than advertising, I want to charge my users for it. If they come from that world, they struggle. They don't get the audiences they think they're going to get. But we work with people who've found their whole career on YouTube and create events on the back of that, and they have millions of subscribers that will come on board from that. Whereas then you get a big global broadcaster, and he thinks he's got a bit of a niche that he might be able to charge from, and he'll probably get 10x less than this one-man band on YouTube. So digital first is important, but the analytics around that, we're working on it, and hopefully we'll have something that we can provide more data back to the content owners this year.
So if we have an increase in direct-to-consumer, we have an increase of real-time analytics passing through feature engineering and strong ML feedback loops. Eventually, you're going to move yourselves back upstream and be influencing production. What are your observations in the 2020s on the feedback loop from distribution back into production? A phenomenon that wasn't necessarily easy to do 20 years ago, but now is more possible. I'd love to hear from the panelists on that feedback loop and the cycle time from audience back to production, and that kind of testing and experimental mindset that introduces in content creation.
I'll have a quick stab at this. So, I mean, we work with people who full broadcast equipment. They have a stadium with 20 cameras in there. They have a full broadcast trucks outside that's uplinked via satellite and all of that. And then we work with, there's a guy who will have a camera crew of 2 and try and model with production, remote mixing. And then we also work with one of our clients called Synergy Sport that recently acquired a company called Keymotion, and they have automated filming in basketball stadiums. And there's a funny story around this. There's a game not long ago, it's a football match, again, automated production. So you can really, with that, I think it's fascinating because any league can monetize their content with zero production costs. The business model around this, what a lot of these guys are doing, is they're looking to get the betting rights for the sport, so therefore they'll give them the equipment. So then suddenly, like, I've got free production. But there was a football game not a few months ago where the automated video camera just followed the referee for the whole game because he mistook his bald head for the football. So there are production issues within that. But we see that we have clients who will sell just as many tickets or to subscribers with a one-man band production team to the full Sky Sports level offering. It's down to you actually bring it down to the fact that if someone is a fan of that piece of content, whether it be music, whether it be sport, whether it be entertainment, whether it be leisure, all of those, if they're into it and they know where they can access to it and they can access it easily, they're going to pay for it. And to be honest with you, some of the content is terribly filmed, but they're fans, so they'll watch it. They know that the more they invest in it, the more the production level is going to go up over time. I think that's also something we can look at.
Yeah, it's crowdsourcing content creators. Yeah. Blue and Logan, what are your observations on the kind of shortening of the feedback loops and the innovation opportunities that provides?
Yeah, I've always been quite keen on seeing more of this, but one great example, I mean, I think Netflix did that in 2019, where they started to do interactive storytelling, and I think HBO had also some crazy series they had produced like this, where you have multiple possible scenarios, and depending on who's the audience and how do they choose to interact with the storytelling, they will choose their path to it. And I find this interesting because it's, from a business standpoint, it means that you're actually taking a direct insight from the audience, whatever it's actually active or passive, into what should you distribute to them, right? And if you look at the e-commerce industry, I mean, to be less talking about cats and nice storytelling, I think it's very important that from a business standpoint, we remind ourselves that the e-commerce industry has been exploding because they had been capable of adjusting their digital strategy to what the audience wanted to see, to each of the person, right? If you look at the Amazon homepage, or if you look at the booking.com, they have thousands of experiments running at any given time to just constantly adjust the offering that is being proposed to the end user. And of course, we're not in this capacity to do that when we are in a video service, but imagine suddenly that if we are capable of placing contextual ads, maybe there is the next generation is of the video experience is actually to put some contextual storytelling, and suddenly you start having a production of content that the multiplication of possibilities with AI is huge, right?
Well, panelists, we're out of time. I would love to keep going with you, but thank you for making the time today to come and talk to us. Here for the Hollywood Professional Association Tech Retreat panel discussion on media distribution and cloud technology.